May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. So the very first thing that both Mary and Martha say to Jesus when he arrives in their hometown of Bethany, the very first thing they both say is, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Lord, if you had been here. They raise, both Mary and Martha, raise a question that is perhaps one of the most often asked questions and most important questions about what God is like. Like, Jesus, if you had been here, then my friend would not have died of cancer. Jesus, if you had been here, then my family would not have come apart. Jesus, where were you? And where are you when there are shootings in my community? Jesus, where are you in places like the Holocaust in Europe, or the genocide in Rwanda, or the ethnic cleansing of Rohingya Muslims in Burma, or of Uyghur Muslims in China? Where were you amidst the horrors of the Atlantic slave trade? Where are you, Jesus? Notice what Jesus does not say to Mary and Martha when they say this to him. When Martha comes up and says, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Jesus does not go into some long conversation, long sermon about a plan. It was God's plan that Lazarus would die. Well, at the beginning of the gospel lesson, Jesus says he is glad that this has happened because then the disciples will believe. But he's not talking about something where God says, I am now going to kill Lazarus for my greater purposes. I am now going to allow your friend to die of cancer because it's part of my thing. I am going to let your family fracture. I'm going to allow our communities to have shootings in them. I am going to let the Holocaust, it's okay that the Holocaust happened because it was for a better purpose. It's okay that the genocide and the ethnic cleansing occur because there's something that we don't see that's a good thing that comes out of it, the horrors of the Atlantic slave trade. Oh yeah, all that was okay because it's part of God's plan. All right. 1, 2, 3. No. No. That's not what God is like. Now, sometimes God does things that we don't understand, but this is not the way God goes. And sometimes, Jesus did not go into a conversation about how all the bad things that happen in the world are because of human sin. Yes, we do horrible things to each other, we human beings. And life would be a lot better even with the stuff we don't to each other. There's still some random things that happen, like the tornado that came through Mississippi just recently. Or, COVID-19, these weird things that happen. We would be able to handle those things a lot better if we were nicer to each other, if we were better people. But that doesn't mean that Jesus is going to respond to Mary and Martha by saying, well, it's your fault, y'all human beings, because y'all just messed up. Doesn't say that. Not what he says. Mary comes to him. Martha comes to him. This is Martha. Martha comes to him and says, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And what does he say? He says, I am. I am here. I am here in the midst of your grief. I am here in the midst of human pain. And I am the resurrection and the life. I am deeper than death. I am deeper than grief. I am deeper than the horrible things that people do to each other. I am deeper than evil itself. And what he says to Mary, she says the same thing to him. She says, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And he says, where have you laid him? And he looks around and he sees people weeping. And he is greatly disturbed, our Bible translation says. If you look at the Greek, you also will see that that also means he's furious. Jesus is furious because human beings suffer. Jesus is furious when we commit injustice and oppression against each other. Jesus is furious. Where have you laid him? Because he at least wants to be with us in the midst of these awful things. And he says, where are you laid him? And Mary and the others say to him something that's absolutely heartbreaking, actually. They say, come and see. Come and see where we've laid Jesus. And it's heartbreaking because all through the Gospel of John, from the very beginning, people have been saying to each other, come and see Jesus. They've been saying, come and see Jesus. So, for example, Philip sees Jesus. He goes to his brother Nathanael, and he says, I think we found the Messiah, Jesus of Nazareth. Nathanael, he's a curmudgeon. He says, oh, what good can ever come out of a little old place like Nazareth, no count hill town? What's that about? And Philip says, come and see. You come and find out. The word see, this is the Greek part of the sermon, everybody, okay? So the word see and know are the same word in the Gospel of John. It's oida. It's the same root as the word video. You see a video, right? Oida, you see something, you know something. Come and know Jesus. Come and learn about Jesus. Come and discover something beautiful. Come and wonder at the power of God. Come and see the light of the world. Come and see the word of God by which the love of God is etched into the foundation of creation, by which the demand for people to be treated as what they are, that is the image of God, and for creation to be treated with respect is etched and woven into the fabric of time and space, into reality itself. Come and see Jesus. Everybody has been saying, come and see Jesus all through the Gospel of John. And now Mary says to him, now, Jesus, we've come to see you. Now you come see us. Come to the tomb, where we're all going to end up sooner or later. Come and see us, Jesus. See how death and evil tear us. And that's when Jesus weeps. Shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus weeps. Jesus weeps with us in our grief when we've lost people that we love. Jesus weeps with us when our families break. Jesus weeps and is furious when there are shootings in our communities. Jesus weeps about the Holocaust and is furious about ethnic cleansing and genocide and the Atlantic slave trade, and weeps. Now, we are followers of Jesus. We follow Jesus. Paul, the Apostle Paul, even calls us the body of Christ. So we also are furious over human suffering. We are furious about things like the Holocaust and genocide and ethnic cleansing and the Atlantic slave trade. We are furious, and we weep. But that's not the only thing we do, because that's not the only thing Jesus does. Jesus is furious. He weeps with us. And then he does something about it. Jesus goes to the tomb where Lazarus is laying. And he says to Martha and everybody around there, he says, roll away that stone. Now, Martha, being a person of practical inclination, points out that it stinks. It's in the present tense. It smells, but everybody can smell it, okay? Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. If you leave meat out for 4 days, what happens to it? It's going to stink. Martha says, but Lord, it smells bad. He's been in there for 4 days. Of course, we don't want to roll the stone away from our tombs, do we? It is very difficult for some of us to open ourselves up when we've lost people who we love, right? It's hard to feel that pain. It's hard to share that pain and trust each other, to care about each other, and to listen and to pray together about the losses that we've had. That's hard. We'd rather look good. We'd rather look strong. We are stoic. We are moving forward. We're going to leave the sad things behind. It's been 2 weeks since my loved one died. I'll just let that go, right? Is that going to work? No, it's not going to work. But we'd rather not roll away that stone because it hurts. We'd rather not roll away that stone when our families are in stress and cracking, because then we might see the unhealthy ways of behaving and the assumptions and the hidden resentments that we have in our own minds and in our own families. And that's not pretty. We're not coming out of this looking pretty. We roll away that stone. We don't want to roll away that stone when it comes to violence in our communities because, oh yeah, it's easy. We say, oh, that person who did that shooting, that was a horrible person. That was an evil thing to do, which it was indeed. But what are the causes? Why was that person in that place, in that time, in that state of mind? What is it that brings about a situation where we have violence in our communities? That doesn't look good. That's the hard conversation to have. That kind of smells bad sometimes. And then we start talking about things like the Holocaust and genocides and ethnic cleansing. And we say, where does that stuff come from? Well, I'll tell you where it comes from. We'd rather not look at it, but this is where it comes from. It comes from lies. It's where it comes from. Genocide and ethnic cleansing and Holocaust and things like that come from people that lie and get benefit from lying. And people who want to hear the lies. Because it's easier to believe that those people over there who are so different from us and who are dangerous to us and who scare us, and those people over there are taking over and everything is their fault. In fact, they are really dangerous. In fact, they're bad people. They're not even really quite human. That's how it goes. That's how it happens. And I tell you something, it stinks. That's how it happens. We'd rather not look at it. We'd rather not look at the continuing effects of the Atlantic slave trade. But it ain't pretty. And Jesus says to Martha, he said, didn't I tell you you would see the glory of God if you believed? Are you willing to believe there is a power and a presence in this world that is deeper than the evil that binds us? Are you willing to believe that there is something that is deeper than death, deeper than the circumstances that twist our minds? Is there something more that is at work in this world? Are we willing to believe? Because otherwise, we are like bones that are spread out in a valley. We're not even together. We're strewn higgledy-piggledy in all directions. There's nothing we can do. It's so sad. Nothing we can do. And then God comes through Ezekiel and says, listen, you all bones who feel like dry bones. Hear the word of the Lord. I will breathe my breath into you. I will breathe my spirit. That's the same word, ruach, spirit and breath. Ruach, I will breathe my spirit into you and you will live. I will breathe my spirit into you so you could roll away that stone. Didn't I tell you, you would see the glory of God? Why do we come to church? Do we come to church to look pretty? Some of y'all are very pretty in your bodies and in your souls, right? But that's not why we come to church. Do we come to church to make business connections? I don't see it happening here. That's okay. You know why? Because that's not why we come to church. We come to church so that we hope to see the glory of God, the forgiveness of sins that rains down from heaven, the healing of body and soul that wells up from the depths of the earth. We come here because we've heard there's something beautiful. You said, see the glory of God. And Martha and Mary, well, Martha, I guess, she has her people roll away that stone. God breathes the breath of God, power, the Spirit of God into us, so we have the courage to be like Martha, to roll away that stone. Because that's where the glory of God is, in the tomb. That's where the glory of God is. That's where Jesus is, in that tomb. So Jesus comes to the tomb. He stands in front of the tomb. He calls out Lazarus' name, just like he's going to call out your name. Indeed, he calls out your name every day. Out from the tomb, out from the power of death, out from bondage to evil and to the devil, out from the bondage to oppression and the way other people think. All kinds of freedom Jesus calls us out into. And he says, Lazarus, come out. And Lazarus, he's coming out like this. He's standing like this. He's all bound up in his grave clothes, all bound up in the power of death, all bound up in the fear of death. And Jesus says, unbind him and let him go. He says that to each one of us and to each other. Unbind each other and let each other go. Okay, so I should stop the sermon right there. Gone on long enough, but that's not the end of the story, even though that's the end of the gospel lesson. So I have to tell you just a little bit more. And that is that right after the verses that we read in the gospel lesson for today, the religious authorities of Jesus' day get together, and that's when they decide they have to kill him because of this miracle. Jesus has just shown us what God is like, that God pulls life out of death. God pulls good out of evil. That there is a power in the world that's deeper. And if there's a power in the world that's deeper than death, then people are going to follow Jesus, and that's going to be really chaotic. That's going to upset all kinds of ways of thinking and ways of acting that are based on the idea that death is the final power in the world. And that's going to be scary because those Romans who wield the power of death are going to come and kill everybody. And so the religious authority of Jesus' day say, we got to get rid of Jesus, we got to get rid of Lazarus too. And Mary and Martha, you would think that perhaps they would tell Jesus, things are getting really dangerous. We had a couple of death threats, so maybe you need to stay away for a while and maybe get a little bit of distance from you, Jesus, so everybody is safe. And that would be an understandable thing to do, but do they do that? No, they do not. They do exactly the opposite. Instead of telling Jesus to stay away, they have Jesus to dinner. They have Jesus to dinner. Well, we have Jesus to dinner every single Sunday. Every single Sunday. And we need to know when we have Jesus to dinner that the Spirit of God comes into us and we are free from the power of death, and things are going to happen that are beautiful and wonderful and scary. And we might get into trouble. That's part of the game. At that dinner, again, Mary and Martha, brave. Mary and Martha, courageous. At that dinner, Martha takes very expensive oil and she anoints Jesus with the oil. She puts that oil on Jesus' body. She knows where Jesus is going. He's going to the cross. He's going to die. She knows this. I don't think she understands about the resurrection yet, and this is very common for the Gospel of John. People don't know the whole picture. They don't have all the answers. We don't know the whole picture. We ourselves, we don't have all the answers, but we have a connection and a relationship with Jesus. We have a love for Jesus, and Mary anoints Jesus because she loves him. With the Spirit of God in us, can we have the courage of Martha to roll away that stone? With the Spirit of God, can we love like Mary, even though we don't know the whole picture or all the answers? Well, sure. Why not? Thanks be to God.